Trump's immigration crackdown and the expanding show of federal force. Community members and lawmakers are demanding accountability from the Trump administration after a deadly immigration traffic stop near Chicago. On Friday, an Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent shot and killed a man in Franklin Park, a Chicago suburb. ICE officials say the 38-year-old resisted arrest and drove his vehicle into the officers arresting him. An ICE agent was dragged and injured. The deceased man had no criminal record, and his family told NBC News that he was dropping off his kids prior to this encounter with ICE. This all comes less than a week into the Trump administration's Operation Midway Blitz, an expanded immigration enforcement effort across Chicago and elsewhere in Illinois. Also this week, the Supreme Court lifted restrictions on racial profiling during immigration stops in Los Angeles. Joining us now to talk all about this and break it down is journalist and author Paola Ramos. She is also a contributor for MSNBC and Noticias Telemundo. You have followed this so closely since the beginning. Is this what voters who voted for Trump signed up for?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think when Trump was extremely clear, when he said that he wanted the largest mass deportation in American history, he told us what that would look like. I think we fell into the trap of believing that he would just go for criminals. But the truth is, if we remember who the architects are, and we remember that Stephen Miller is at the heart of this, these are people that fundamentally believe, and they've been saying this for decades at this point, like they truly fundamentally believe that if you are an immigrant, you don't deserve due process. And if that you are an immigrant, they believe that you are stealing jobs from Americans, which is something that we saw in Georgia with this massive workplace raid. And so, yes, I think now it's a matter of, if you're a Latino voter, for instance, right, 45% voted for Donald Trump, the question that I have is, do you feel remorse? And does that remorse, does that moral remorse outweigh all the elements that Trump was able to incite?
Are you hearing any remorse yet?
What are you hearing?
I don't think it's clear yet. I think Democrats believe that this is a tipping point, right? Like I think they think this is a breaking point where Latino voters that are seeing these images in front of us, that are seeing the ICE raids, the racial profiling, I think the sense is, the intuition is that we will feel something. However, I think if Trump showed anything, is that this anti-immigrant sentiment, that everyone can feel that, that to be a Latino or to be an immigrant doesn't mean that you're immune to that. And so I think as we're hearing him talking about crime in the way that he does and saying things like, I will save you, we cannot forget that people listen to that. And it is pretty powerful for some folks, including Latinos and immigrants.
Paola, what has the reaction been to the Supreme Court's ruling that basically says, if you're Latino, look Latino, sound Latino, that it's perfectly legal for you to be picked up? And I just want to read Justice Sotomayor's dissent in that case. She wrote, "We should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work at a low-wage job, rather than stand idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost." I dissent.
I think it's hitting everyone. The other day I was talking to a Cuban American living in South Florida who voted for Trump. And she said that for the first time, she is feeling what it means to be an immigrant. That she was scared to go to Walgreens or CVS because of the way, and she said, I'm quoting her, because of the way people are looking at me. And so yes, what the Supreme Court is saying is essentially, if you are an ICE agent, to your point, you speak in Spanish, you have an accent, you look Latino, you can be stopped, which is remarkable that this Supreme Court is giving this administration so much power, given that this is an administration that literally deported over 250 Venezuelan migrants because they looked like gang members, even though they had absolutely no criminal record. The majority of them didn't. And so I think folks are starting to understand what that reality means, but I think this goes beyond immigrants. I think what the Supreme Court is essentially doing is opening the door for racial profiling to be weaponized in the name of any citizen or not that is threatening national security in this country. Like, who are we to know where they draw the line? And I think that's the scary part.
Yep. And some of the plaintiffs that brought this case to the Supreme Court, or brought this case are folks who are citizens of this country who say, I was pulled out, I was taken away. It wasn't that they saw my real ID and thought I was okay. They held me for longer than was clearly appropriate. You know, the president has been given, just the presidency has been given a lot of latitude to kind of decide who is allowed in and out of this country and how to expel them. They're expanding those, right? There's all these plenary powers. But the Fourth Amendment feels very important here, right? This protects people in this country under unreasonable search and seizure. Someone going to you and saying, hey, show me your ID, show me something to prove that you're an American citizen. That feels like unreasonable search and seizure to a lot of Americans.
Of course, and what they're saying is that ethnicity now is a relevant factor, you know, so long as it is combined with other factors. But
not in college admission, of course.
Except for that, of course.
Yeah.
What worries me, though, is the moment that we're in right now, like today, you know, what it means for Trump's mass deportation agenda to unfold in the country that we find ourselves this Sunday. A country that is completely on edge, a country that is, of course, seeing the rise of political violence, one in which I think we're all in the midst of kind of coming to terms with this huge, huge socio-political transformation that is normalizing racial profiling, that is normalizing the sort of due process disappearing, that is normalizing seeing ICE agents. And so what worries me is that I feel like we are literally in the middle of a perfect storm where violence, including what happened in Chicago, is in our fingertips. And I think overshadowing all of this is this idea that we are so conditioned to believe that immigrants are the enemy, that the other is the enemy, you know, that the foreign person is the enemy. And I think when I really felt this is when the governor of Utah, Governor Cox, said in a very genuine way, he said, look, I was praying because I was praying that, you know, the assassin, the murderer, I was praying for that person to not be one of us. No, I was praying for that person to be someone from another country. And it was so genuine because I think the instinct that we have is, yes, no, the story that we've been told is, yes, the foreigner is the enemy. And I think all of these things manifest in those ICE raids, and they manifest in the way that these agents are looking at us, no?
When we're talking about storytelling, though, do you feel that Democrats have done a good job in their own respect when it comes to storytelling and propagating the story of the American immigrant and what that means, and rebutting what Republicans are saying in this moment?
I think what I noticed, at least up until the election, is that the disillusionment that a lot of Latinos and immigrants felt, they felt it with both parties, right? I think for decades, many Latinos and mixed status families and immigrants have been hoping and wishing for the Democratic Party to do something, you know, to grant them relief. And I think what I'm noticing, and at least in November of 2024, is that many people felt let down. So yes, I think now there's enough voices out there that are, of course, denouncing what's happening in the ICE raids, but what more? Right? Like, where is comprehensive immigration reform?
Yeah, if you were to pinpoint
a
moment where you felt like Latino voters really turned against Democrats, what would that be?
I mean, I think it's been happening since 2016, right? I mean, I remember in 2016, right, the theory of the case was that regardless of who you were and how you voted, if you were a Latino, in the face of someone like Donald Trump, the theory was that Latinos would overwhelmingly vote against him. And in 2016, less than 50% of Latinos showed up to the polls. And so I think already in that moment, we start seeing that something is shifting. Fast forward to 2020, after 4 years of Trumpism, after family separation, after workplace ICE raids, Donald Trump gets 10 points more in 2020 than in 2016. Fast forward to where we are, 2024, he gets 48% of the Latino vote. So this has been in the works for many, many, many years. Yeah.
One of the questions that is always on my mind is when you're talking to a lot more of these Latino leaders than I am, how do they defend against some of this, the disinformation and misinformation that's coming out, right? And how do they tell the community, like, look what Stephen Miller is trying to do to us?
Yeah.
He doesn't, he's not a friend of yours. He is not someone who's thinking about your success in this country.
Yeah, I feel like we haven't touched on this enough, which is I do feel like the basis of the argument from Republicans is it's the foundation is on a bit of misinformation. I
Yeah.
remember being with Latino voters on the ground in 2016, following them around and them getting misinfo sent to them from the Trump campaign on WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, so much of for instance, the misinfo, which we're hearing so much, even now with Zohran Mamdani's race, is Democrats are communists, no, ellos son comunistas. And that worked really, really well. And so I think one of the things that I see Democrats doing is trying to remind Latinos that so much of what is happening in our country resembles the countries that they left. That authoritarian talk, the authoritarian violence, that I think is something that they feel that Latinos that left Cuba or Venezuela or Chile or Colombia in some ways will understand that what is happening here is very, very familiar because of the countries that we left.
And they were told that it was going to happen under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, but it's actually happening under.
Exactly. And, it's so complicated. We could talk about this forever, but I think this is where it gets so nuanced, where Latinos, we have a very complicated relationship with authoritarianism that has also been conditioned by a U.S. history of intervention in Latin America that conditioned us to believe that when democracy feels messy, at times strongman rule is necessary. And so I think that's why all of this, to your point, Jackie, it's so complex, right? Because we think that if you call Donald Trump a dictador, that's enough. It's not.
Wow. Paola Ramos, once again, demonstrating why she is a phenomenal guest. Paola, thank you very much for coming.
Education.
Yes, thank you so much.